beep, 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 beep. Hello, peeps. How we doing? Right, okay. Got an interesting one for you today from Heather Brunskill Evans, a marvellous lady who I've met. And she's written about something that I think is fascinating because it's about how this nonsense affects a particular community, which I find interesting. And a particular community with a very particular method of being. The Quakers, you see. We're going to talk about the Quakers, who do great work. Now, we have a place in Manchester, which is a big hall that the Quakers own. And they cancelled one of the events that was being run by a friend of mine on the basis of belief. And it's interesting to see that Heather's now writing about what's going on within the Quaker community in her article from the 7th of August, which is entitled "The Quaker Pledge Not in My Name." All is not well, says Heather, within British Quakerism. There has been a gradual but incremental top-down imposition of partisan values. Right, so it's now affecting the Quakers. Right, top-down imposition of partisan values. And these values are about sex and gender, passed off as the discerned collective voice of Quakers in Britain, or Friends, as we often call ourselves. One example is a recent statement on the official Quaker website informing Friends that the recording clerk, Paul Parker, has signed a pledge on our behalf. Now, there's a link in the article, which is in the Dubris, to the pledge. And it's a pledge all about "We stand with trans." From a charity so straight pledge to support the rights of trans, non-binary and gender diverse communities. Now, we've seen this in our community, for what they call it community is not. So I'm seeing parallels here, Heather, with what's been happening to gay people, is that they've been forced to agree to a pledge in order to get a ban to go to Pride. This is the kind of authoritarian and totalitarian behaviour we're seeing from these third sector organisations. Now, Paul signed this on behalf of the Quakers. You're like, what are you doing, mate? You know what you're doing? The pledge is the brainchild of the campaign group Charity So Straight, which describes its core mission as to be the voice for all LGBTQI plus people in the voluntary sector. Well, I don't know who Charity So Straight think they are, but we'll have a look and find out. Yep, you might want to go and have a look yourselves. Tell me what you find. Right? To be a voice for all LGBTQ plus people. How dare you? The lobby group believes that all trans and non-binary people should be able to live, work and access services without facing discrimination. It is currently calling upon all charity sector leaders to be on the right side of history and here's a quote here, "Join us in standing with the trans community and in saying that the charity sector is and must remain a safe place for all trans and non-binary people. Never before have we seen so much hatred directed at the trans and non-binary community." Now, on the face of it, Parker's actions to become a signatory and his supporting statement are commensurable with Quaker values. So actually they line up with Quaker values. Which Quaker could object to holding the charity sector to account if it fails in a commitment to the equality and inclusion of trans-identified people? However, Parker's position misleads British Quakers as well as the general public, and he strays far beyond the remit of powers designated to him by British Quakers, which is the organisation. It's fascinating to me, this, Heather. Fascinating. What we're seeing here is the burgeoning destruction of the Quakers. What we're seeing here is the burgeoning destruction of a belief system that is being taken advantage of by a group of maniacs. This is all they can do. See, they have to infect everything. So Parker asserts that a fundamental Quaker belief is that gender and sexuality are sacred gifts. This is not a factual statement. I imagine it will be the first of many non-factual statements, Heather. Quakers are respected for being one of the first faith groups to practice the equality of the sexes. For example, women in the second half of the 17th century ministered on an equal footing with men. That's an extraordinary thing to have been happening then. A tradition, it should go without saying, that we proudly follow in the 21st century. We also believe that sexuality, heterosexual and homosexual, is how we as humans can express love and grace. Now, these fundamental beliefs, however, have nothing to do with gender in the sense that Parker uses the term. A fundamental belief in gender has not been discerned by British Quakers, and Parker has no authority to declare it so. Gender is a pesky, ambiguous word. Those Quakers not keeping up with current debates, and why would they, since they are often fractious and confusing, could easily labour under the misapprehension that Parker is using the word gender as a synonym for biological sex. Many would. It's what happens, isn't it? They think it is a synonym for biological sex. For such a Quaker, the statement gender is a sacred gift is completely compatible with the statement a woman is an adult human female. However, pledging so pledging us, that meaning the Quakers, to the values of charity so straight is effectively a commitment to the belief that what makes a woman is an inner identity. The view held by Quakers that a woman is sexed female, and that this is an uncontentious statement of empirical fact and biological truth, is interpreted by this lobby group as an act of hate and transphobia. This is literally one guy on behalf of all friends, Quakers, giving away the shop. And I bet he doesn't know he's done it. Charity So Straight asserts that someone is trans if their gender identity is inconsistent with the sex that they were assigned at birth. A person's trans identity is individual, personal, and independent from medical intervention. What this means is that the category of woman is bifurcated into two: cis women and trans women. For example, a man, fully genitally intact, who identifies as a woman must be treated as a woman for all purposes, on all occasions, and without exception. Any challenge to this opinion is misgendering and an example of anti-trans hate. He signed up to a totalitarian bunch of nutters, homophobic nutters and misogynistic nutters. Many British Quakers remain oblivious to the new language, truth and ethics of transgenderism. It is morally wrong of Parker to position his views on gender as in line with the historical fundamental Quaker belief in sex equality. So true. Gender does not mean biological sex. The belief that a man who self-declares as a female is a female and has a right as a trans woman to occupy women's spaces as a woman is a view that destabilizes our very historical commitment to sex equality. This is the Quakers' historical commitment to sex equality. On what authority does Parker claim to represent the British Quakers? First, he does so as the most senior staff member at Quakers in Britain. As such, he has joined a diverse range of charity leaders pledging to stand with trans people against hate. Second, he refers to a decision made in 2021 by Britain Yearly Meeting, BYM. BYM is an annual gathering that performs several functions in the life of Quakers, including, that is, an occasion when the concerns of one group of Quakers or another can be shared with the meeting as a whole, as it seeks God's guidance and relates each particular insight or service to the others brought before it. The concerns put before BYM in 2021 by Quakers who identify as trans or non-binary, and by their allies, some of whom belong to Quaker Rainbow Group, resulted in a BYM statement that Quaker places of worship should be welcoming and supportive to trans and non-binary people. It is not clear why trans-identified friends, rather than, for example, black friends or friends with a disability, should be singled out for special inclusion, since it is the Quaker ethos that individuals are of equal value and that there is that of a God in everyone. A wonderful concept, that of God in everyone. It is axiomatic, therefore, that we welcome all individuals to our meetings, however diverse their experiences, including those of other faiths. On what moral foundation does Parker stretch BYM's statement far beyond its intention? Parker commits British Quakers to the pledge because trans and non-binary people are facing an unprecedented level of hatred in the UK, which is affecting all aspects of their daily life. The term hate is repeated 3 times in the short statement. Its use is incompatible with the Quaker value of not ascribing evil to those who carry out actions to which we morally object, and our obligation not to engage in immoderate language about the other. What Heather illustrates, I think, to us here, and please, I do urge you to go and read the whole article, there's more to it, and Heather writes beautifully. What Heather has managed to illustrate here is a perfect example of the textbook takeover by the cult of critical social justice, in this instance, gender ideology and queer theory, and it's managed to get the Quakers right at the very top, a top-down imposition. Again, this is only ever imposed, isn't it, folks? It's only ever imposed. So I would say read it, and give me your comments in the sections below. Let me know what you think. Have a read of Heather's article. Is this not showing us something very clear? That the gullibility of leadership across the board is falling for this at such a rate, and they're signing stupid pledges that they don't understand. Expect more, all right? Thanks for the great article, Heather. Go well, everybody.